don't bite off more than you can chew. Learn the word no. And that's something I actually got more or less from my dad. For a while there, I'm like, it's fine, I'm making money, whatever. But really, it's just taking on too much. That's been my biggest learning curve, is just learning how to say no and knowing your self-worth. I know I'm more than just building for somebody. I feel what my next stage in building is going to be, it's going to not only, of course, it'll help my family immediately, but it's going to help a lot of local families, which is amazing to me because the cost of living here has gone through the roof and a lot of people don't make that much money to afford a place to live. And I'm a lucky person to be smart and creative and being able to make things happen. That to me is rewarding, to be able to know that I'll provide a home for somebody that they can afford.
Welcome to episode 112 of the AFT Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Levitt. And in this episode, I speak with Landon Mondragon. And Landon is a design build contractor here locally. He's also been on HGTV and had a pilot launch with HGTV. So we spoke about that episode and just the complexity of doing that project. But not only that, how that set the tone for his business, how that set the tone for his systems and management. How is Landon dealing with supply chain challenges right now? What is the biggest value? As he looks back, if he were to start his company today, where would he start? And there were some great conversations about just that relationship, networking with his trade partners, and just other builders that I've networked with. There was so much valuable information that Landon shared. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm Brad Levitt, president of AFT Construction, and today we have one of my good friends on, Mr. Landon Mondragon. Welcome, Landon.
How we doing?
So Landon and I have been connected for quite some time, and I really respect what Landon does. He is a design build contractor, does his own design, does his own build. Extremely creative. I've walked your projects. I've been through many of them. We've been friends we met initially through Instagram. Been friends because you're here local for a few years now, and I've just admired everything you're doing, and this has been long overdue, so I'm glad you came on today.
I appreciate that. I mean, and being here and being part of this as my first podcast, I mean, and especially with you, who I just, look up to, and your work is amazing. I'm super pumped to be here, man.
Yeah, it's exciting. And it's funny you say that because we'll get into this, but for those listening, as we get into this later in the conversation, Landon was on HGTV, so he's an HGTV star. He's our claim to fame here.
And this is paid, right? This is a paid podcast, right? Okay, yeah. Get with my agent. All right.
But the reality is it's crazy this is your first podcast. But before we get into that, I think for the listeners to understand a little bit more about you, I mean, Landon, you've come a long way. I mean, you've done build to suits, you self-perform, you've done flips, you've done your own investments. I mean, all over the place. And so looking at your structure now, if you were to start your business in construction, where would you start?
Hands down, like personnel. It's probably it took me so long to get my team that I have now that if I could go back and cut that time even in half, I'd be so far ahead. The subs that I have right now just perform at, the quality that I need to deliver to my clients. So So what does that consist of? I mean, for you as a design build contractor, when you talk about personnel of these, and you mentioned this a little bit, like the trade partner, subcontractors, so are you specifically speaking of them or the team itself under Landon Mondragon? Yeah, more my team. I mean, my trades. Because without them, I'm really nobody. I mean, not very many people know this, but I literally have been running my whole business basically by myself. Of course, I have an accountant, but I do like my own social media. I go and do my own sales. I do my own contracts, which is just, it's insane. Don't do what I do. Like seriously, like it's been a nightmare in some cases. But yeah, man, without my guys, I wouldn't be in the position I am, and it took a long time to build them. So I'm just very thankful to be able to have the crew I do. Well,
this is an interesting conversation because as you think about building a team, building a network, whether it be employees that work under you directly or whether it be trade partners, subcontractors, over time, as you get experience, as you go through, you start to refine that. You start to meet new ones through networking and maybe even through social media, companies reach out. Where would you recommend? How have you seen some of your best subcontractors? Where have they come from? How have those relationships been developed? Over time?
I mean, really, like the best way I've been able to find them is word of mouth or reaching out to people like yourself, and asking you, hey, do you have I think I reached out to you not too long ago, was like, how's your HVAC guy? Because I was just having a kind of an issue with my guy and he didn't want to do quite as big of a job that I was on. He felt a little intimidated and I reached out to you because I know you do, what's your smallest house these days? Like 20,000 square feet. So, I reached out to you, but, just having those guys and reaching, being able to, what do you want to say? Use your social media has helped me a bunch. Get some people, but mainly just using my relationships that I've built with my friends, with my contractor friends.
I'm glad you said that, and I'll give a little shout out. So Sticks and Bricks Development, JD has become a friend of mine as well,
Okay.
same as you, Landon, and similar where I've reached out to you for some subs. I mean, there was a time where I'm like, hey, I really need these scopes of work. For example, a stucco company. At the time, I really needed, and he recommended someone that he had known for a long time. They've been amazing. They've been one of our key trade partners
That's great.
for the last 5 years. And so, one of the really most valuable ads of social media is, the networking, right? You and I meet through Instagram, and now as we respect each other in the craft, and we know how difficult construction is, and that relationship with the client and our trade partners. What's amazing is you can essentially vet or network, because when I look at some of my good subs, I know I can't keep them busy by myself. I just can't. And they have to support their team, they have to support their families, their group, and they need other good general contractors that are going to respect the work that they do. They're going to value that. They're going to pay them on time. And so there is a very, elite's not the right word, but there's a network of builders that respect this process, right, of building.
Absolutely.
And by networking with them, and as you said, I think that's been I don't want to say a shortcut, but it's been a great avenue for us to build a very talented trade partner base.
Yeah, it's exactly what you said, vetting them, right? Like you've already used them and people know like who AFT is. You guys aren't just out there doing the mom and pop little things. You guys are out there really building and changing the landscape here. And it's nice to be able to call somebody like you that's already build an established relationship with these people, because now it's like, hey, I don't have to be like, can I come see one of your jobs? No, you already know.
Yeah, and the reality is, I mean, especially in this climate, right? This current economy of construction, it's really difficult to get supply chain. It's difficult to get labor, and so those relationships, right, that you've cultivated, you or myself or other peers, are really valuable right now. And I even look back. I mean, before starting AFT, I was fortunate to work for a really good builder in town and met a lot of good subcontractors. I still are good friends to this day. I still use, and so that was another method before starting my company, is really develop those relationships with the trade partners, the salespeople, the installers. And by meeting them and developing those relationships, now we start AFT, and it's like, hey, call them up, doors open, we're doing this work, and you already have that known entity, that known relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things I've realized now with having such great subs, I mean, is I've built this. We're like a team. We're like family at this point, right? But what I have heard, like through the grapevine, just from a lot of my other contracting friends, is just it's hard to get guys to show up. It's hard to get guys to bid your homes. I have friends that have called other contractors to have them come bid their homes, and they come out and then gone. So everybody's just, there's so much work out there right now. People are just being so picky and choosy of whatever they want to do, and it's kind of name my price. You don't want to pay it, that's cool. Down the street will.
So how are you dealing with that? I don't want to say the pushback you have as a general contractor, but the reality is, I mean, there's still price protection to some extent you have to have for your clients on a design build for your client, for your investment, which I know you do a lot of as well. So with those, how are you sensitive to the demands that our trade partners have with their labor force, sensitive to it, and still working with the budget, which everyone has?
It's actually a very difficult question. I guess my approach has just been, my guys have been with me for a while now, so I kind of know where we're at. The only thing that's really been fluctuating on mine is material, which has been going through the roof. And, fortunately in contracts, I have written in there, hey, you guys are paying
escalation clauses.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But I'm fortunate in a spot right now to where my team is, I know where their prices are at. And if they try to be like raising something because, I have all this work right now, I don't have that problem personally. So I actually don't know how to answer that amongst some of my other peers out there that have probably been having that issue. I guess I'm just very fortunate to have my guys. I mean, I know this could be bad, and whoever's listening could say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe he does it." I mean, I don't much shop my guys' price around. Like, I just have my crew, and I know it's like, hey, we get in, we're flexible. If one of my guys is behind, it pushes another guy. All of us know each other very well, So it's like, oh, hey, Tom was running a day late here. I can move this, and everybody just works together.
Well, what's interesting, and let's touch on that, because I think this is an important topic to speak about, and this is for other contractors and designers, architects that listen, even clients, right, and that are out there, prospective clients. When you think about that comment, Landon, when you think about the complication of the building process, there's so much that goes into the craftsmanship of a home. There's a lot of coordination. There's a lot of relationship. There's a lot of material. You're dealing with so many personalities. And this, before I touch upon this, what's going back to that original comment, you said, hey, Brad, you just build these 20,000 square foot houses. And what's funny is we actually have a house that's 3,000 square feet, right? And but we do have some bigger ones. We kind of range in there. And I always tell my clients, hey, I just want to work for good people. It's a really tough business. It's a tough industry. I want to work for good people, and I don't care if you're spending 100,000 or 10 million or 3,000 square feet or 30. It doesn't matter. And so, under that understanding of our goal is working with clients, but you think about the building process. And I had Matt Reisinger, and he was on early on in the podcast in the 40s sometime last year, and he said a couple things that really had a big impact on me. He said, "Look, Brad, because one of the things I've struggled with is when you're doing a cost plus or when you're hard bidding, right? One of the things that the clients want is they want at least 3 bids from every scope, right? And what's really tough about that is at the end of the day, this is a risk business. We take the risk. And not only the lifeline to our business and our families and all the work we've put into it, but when you get into the structural components of a home, whether it be excavation, whether it be masonry, waterproofing, framing, concrete, these are core elements that really will dictate the success of our career, warranty, safety of our clients and us, right, at the end of the day. And Matt's always been like, look, when it comes to life hazard scopes of work, I'm getting 1 bid.
Yep.
And it's the people that I know and I trust. And, the assurance I can give you as the client is that it's not like I'm saying, hey, Landon, I'm going to hire you and sky's the limit on your pricing. I mean, I have a gauge internally to know what did I pay on the previous project, whether it be by square foot or lump sum or whatever it was. So I know essentially what concrete's costing me per square foot. I know what framing's costing me. So I can still track that. There may be some escalations due to current market conditions, but at the end of the day, I don't have to shop this guy. I can at least, there's a relationship where I know he's not trying to get rich off one job. There's been this relationship we've had for many years. I know the work he's going to perform, the value he's going to bring. And so for me, it's helping the client understand that process, that value, and knowing that we are still price competitive, but it doesn't mean you have to get 3 bids essentially.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you nailed it with like the structural components, I mean, when you boil it down to a house, yeah, your concrete and your framing are like your big 2s, in my opinion. That's what one's holding the house and the other one is the house, right? so it's those are your 2 guys. You never want to chimp on. You don't want to try to go find a guy that's less expensive if you're already really happy and with the way one of them delivers, right? And same with framing. I mean, this guy's 5,000 cheaper, than the other guy. What does that really mean in terms of, okay, now you got to put your name on this product for, the next 10 years as a builder, right? You have like a 210, right? So you have to be responsible for this work. And I don't know. I can't put a price on that. I don't, even if I had to take it out of my end, I'm okay with that because I know I'm like, okay, I'll make it up somewhere else in the job somewhere. Maybe I can come down here or there to make up for you maybe wanting to go with, my neighbor, he's a framer. Do you think we could, I've gone down that road before. Oh, my cousin's I'm sorry. Did you say family? No.
Yeah.
Out of the question. No.
Well, there's nothing more expensive than a cheap price, right?
Yeah.
And it's important, that not only us, but the clients understand. And there's so much, I don't want to say vagueness, but interpretation when it comes to bidding, when it comes to estimating, when it comes to actual, install of the work. And that interpretation is really important for us to dissect as the GC. So looking at this relationship that's incredibly complicated, Landon, when you start your company and you're okay, so personnel is key. And I think that's really valuable because when I've asked that question to other people in the past, that direction has not been taken, but the value is we're only as good as our subcontractor base, our trade partner base. In addition to that, where do you think you've refined yourself as a business owner now a lot better than Landon 1.0 from the very beginning? What would you also look at in addition to just creating that amazing team?
Well, that's a good question over there, Mr. Brad. I think one of the things that I've changed a lot about how I do business now versus then was I got really good at reading my clients, getting into the right relationships. Right, that has been like the big one for me because when you just get that gut feeling when you're getting into a big long deal with somebody where if you're going to be building them a home, you got to be friends for a year, you know. And out of the gates, if you're feeling a little wish-washy, don't be afraid to walk, you know? Don't The money's not that important. Like I've learned that quality of life, I guess that's probably what it boils down to. It's quality of life is what I have learned. Then when I was yes, 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 and now I'm a yes no person, you know? Not because the amount of work that's out there, but it's because now I've realized like, okay, I don't want to put myself through that because it just you bring it home sometimes, you know, your clients put you in a bad mood or something and you're just it just ruins your week or something like that, and I'm over that. I'm past that.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that. I feel that that is one aspect that we don't speak enough about in our industry or even on social media is how to vet clients, right? How to find the ideal clients. How do we have a temperature of the room and the space? Because a lot of times, you think about it like your eyes are bigger than your stomach when it comes to like food, right? When you're ordering, if
Yeah.
you're really hungry, it's no different than, hey, I really want this job. Like I really want this amazing portfolio project that I can market and advertise. And I'm going to deal with this client that may be unrealistic or this building process that may not have all the elements I really need to be successful. But you kind of have your eye on the prize without thinking about, well, how are we going to get there? And I've made that mistake many times. In fact, the last time I made that mistake was in Paradise Valley about 4 years ago. It was probably the worst experience I've ever had for a client. And I really learned there are some boxes that have to be checked at minimum for me to say, yeah, I'm going to be the right contractor for you. And it helped me internally say, okay, here's the boxes, here's kind of the ideal client I'm looking for. They need to have a designer. They need to have an architect, right? They need to have kind of these elements so that I can be successful at my job. If they fired all of them on 2 different occasions, well, then there's probably a problem there, right? That I need to figure out. But what's interesting is after creating that checklist, I had this amazing project. It was this incredible project in a part of town we wanted to work in. It was one of those, I don't want to say trophy home, but it's just a really awesome project for the portfolio. And I remember that the client was really aggressive. The husband was really aggressive with me on phone calls and with the team. And I'm like, just kind of getting this feel. And then we had a conference call with the architect. And on the conference call, he starts yelling at his wife, like yelling at her in front of me and the architect.
Ugh.
We weren't even in the same room. I mean, we're on the phone, and
That's like the dead giveaway right there. You're just like, ugh.
And I'm like, if he's going to talk to his wife and his spouse that way in front of me,
yep.
What's going to be our relationship 8 months from now? And I left, and he wasn't happy about it, but
good for you.
Yeah, it was early construction, and sometimes you just have to take a step back where I've seen the signs for certain clients, whether it's personality, whether it's unrealistic expectations that they may have of me as the builder, especially in COVID times where it's really tough to build. And I just have to tread lightly and in the most polite way say, hey, we're not a good fit. Let's hit the reset button.
And the other thing here that I think is huge is, you obviously have an amazing team, like amazing staff that's beneath you, So the moment you sign up with that guy, you literally just brought all your guys through the muck. Like, all your whole team, all your project managers, your whomever, your subs, if they're on site there and somebody the owner comes and is like, why is this sub doing that? Decides to lay into one of your subs. You're basically setting yourself up for everybody, So it's important to have a strong leader like yourself that can go in and be like, hey, this we're just not a good fit.
I'm glad you shared that because, one thing, when you think about the morale of a company, right, whether it's your work family, your employees, whether it be your trade partners that you alluded to in the very beginning and spoke of highly, Landon, is that there has to be some sensitivity there. This comes down to company culture. It comes down to building successful companies. It's not just, hey, do we have a gym in the office? Do we provide lunch every day? Those are great things, working at Google, whatever. But at the same time, when you think about, well, what projects am I challenging with them? What kind of people are they dealing with every day? How are those interactions? Are these clients really demanding of their personal life? Do they have ability to check out, after hours? My team works really hard and they're amazing. And I do have to be really cautious, as you mentioned, I don't want to run them through the muck by bringing in a client that isn't going to be conducive to their health and performance and mental stability, because this is a really stressful industry.
Especially right now. It's just so big to make sure everybody on your team, you're thinking of everybody all the time. You're not a one-man show. You're thinking of your whole team, and that's what I've come to realize is so important. And just making sure my guys are around good people. I don't. Nobody on here maybe knows me personally, but I seem to think I'm a good person. So
Great
I'm
guy.
like, thanks. But I just don't want to be. I want to be around more people that are, like how I am.
Yeah, you surround yourself. I mean, you are who you surround yourself with.
Right.
I mean, that's the reality. So if you surround yourself with successful people, with good people, with people with good virtue, whatever it may be, good business ethics, entrepreneurship mentality, right? You're going to wean off, you're going to gain insight off of that. And it's really, I had a peer when I was really young, I think I was like 21 years old, that was really big on that. He's like, Brad, whoever you surround yourself with, that's who you become. And it was really a goal at that time. Well, who am I surrounding myself with? Who am I aspiring to be? How do I want to get there? And then always having that vision and then saying, and it's not that you're kissing up or like being fake. It's just, no, this is the goal that I want to pursue. And this is how we're going to get there.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, if I was to give anybody advice, it'd be to figure out how to maybe get better at that. Get a book in psychology, right? Study the mind. Like, how does the mind work? I used to play poker professionally when I was 23 to 26, right? And I did very well for like those 3 years, but it just, I don't know, it was kind of a stressful job and took the fun out of it, right? But
definitely a stressful job.
But part of, you're playing with money every day for sure. But part of it that I loved was I got really good at reading people. And when I say reading, like, tells, like, you see, it's maybe, what do you want to say, a little different. You're not reading somebody's tells as much as you're reading maybe how they react to a question when you're dealing with somebody in like a construction across from them, you're vetting a client. So I just think having like a poker mindset going into it is also a good, interesting approach. But psychology mainly just being able to kind of read your opponent. I call him almost an opponent at this point. I don't know if that's the right term, but it's just like, all right, because when you're trying to capitalize and get them to sign the dotted line. I mean, they're at that point you're fighting somebody else, right? Like somebody else is. You guys are both trying to get the same guy. So at that point, I call him like an opponent. You're like trying to win. So,
yeah, we're highly competitive people, right? It's a competitive industry, like they all are. So, I mean, you're always trying to find a way to bridge that gap and, create that separation. Now, we're super excited to welcome one of our new sponsors to the podcast, Pella Windows. And this is even more exciting because we use Pella in so many of our projects, nearly all of them. And they've been just an incredible partner of ours. And locally, Sammy and Adam, they are not only amazing business partners behind us, but they are super close friends. And I speak on the podcast all the time about the importance of relationships, right? Relationships with our customers, with our vendors, with our suppliers, because at the end of the day, I'm only as good as those that help our brand and assist us in our projects to take it from the ground up all the way to completion. And if we didn't have partners such as Pella, there's no way we'd be who we are today. Over the years, we've built this amazing relationship. When we call them or email them, they respond. They're quick. Their company culture, their integrity, their honesty, they are always there to do what's right for us and the customer. They can do anything from small replacement projects to large custom homes and even multi-million-dollar commercial projects. And also, when you think about their product line, they can do ultra contemporary, historical preservation, and large traditional projects. So for anyone, any scale, any size, they're the ones to call. They're here local. They have an amazing Instagram. Make sure and give them a follow to see what they're doing. So if you need windows and doors, give Sammy and Adam a call. We stand behind Pella. We love what they do, their culture, their brand, and especially their quality. And if you want to learn more about Pella Windows, check our show notes. We'll have everything tagged there so you can give them a follow and have their contact information to reach out. And now let's get back into the episode. So getting back to that, I mean, you talked about how complicated it is to build right now, which it is. And I've spoken about that at length with some of the guests on this podcast. But from your side, Landon, it's even more complicated when you bring in a TV show. So when you have HGTV and you have vendors and you have timelines, right? These aren't timelines that can move like we're dealing with now, that maybe there's some flexibility. So where did that opportunity come up, even the opportunity to be on, have your own pilot episode?
Instagram, actually. So there was an executive that works for Scripps Network, which owns HGTV. And she had been following me for a long time, and I had no idea who she was. And she reached out to some production companies to, hey, call this guy up, see if he's interested, shoot him an email. Got this one email, went right into the trash. Like, I trashed it. I'm like, this is a scam.
Yeah,
for sure. No, I mean, I really did. And then all of a sudden that person was calling me a couple times, and I'm like, man, this is such a scam. I got on the phone with them, and I'm like, oh, and it just didn't feel right. I'm like, this isn't me. This is something. I don't know. I don't want to say it wasn't me, but it just didn't seem real. Right. I guess that was the thing. Cause I'm like, oh, it's TV. Yeah, right. I'm like, you're just some scam. You want some money or something like that. But anyways, fast forward, she then reached out to me directly and was like, hey, that was a real call. That was a real company that I sent. And I'm like, oh, who are you? And, she introduces herself and tells me, and she's like, I'm going to send another production company your way. I want you to, if you're interested in this, she basically was like, would you consider this? And I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. So we did, a little video about myself. There was somebody asking me questions, and then it got taken to production, and then they approved it, and they sent out a company out to Arizona and filmed me on one of my flips I was currently working on, which was good timing. And they filmed a little video, made a mini pilot, I guess you could call it. And next thing I know, they said, hey, we got greenlit for a pilot to film a flipping show with you. And I'm like, what? Like, are you serious? I've watched this on TV a bunch of times on all the networks, and either on DIY, HGTV, all those networks. And next thing I know, we're filming a show out here in Scottsdale, and there's like, what, we need you to do something amazing with this house. I'm like, okay, well, this is my one shot. I got to show the world like what I'm about and what I can do. So bought this house, 1,300 square feet, and we put a 1,600 square foot addition on it. They said, you have 55 days. And
to do the full addition, like structurally, cosmetic, everything
enough to be able to have cameras in there filming when you're done, like turnkey, furnished, everything. So we get into this. So mind you, you have at least 2 cameras rolling at all times, right? And you walk in a door. Okay, now we got to do it from this side, and we got to do it. So everything you're doing is three different times, right? So if that is not enough for you to just go insane after a little bit, just going, I just did that. Like, how can I do that again differently, right? And then all the cameras in your face, and then knowing, okay, you're still trying to manage a budget. You want to make $1 on this project. Then you think about the big picture, and you're like, okay, forget about the big picture because it might not happen. You get, so all those things are going through your mind. And we get to a point like halfway through, and I'm looking at my schedule because this realistically was like a 100-day build. Putting 1,600 feet on a house with also remodeling the additional 1,300. We replumbed, rewired, all new HVAC, a brand new roof, a 1,600 square foot addition, fully landscaped outside. And I don't mean like grass and some rock. I mean, we had metal planters. I mean, it was done to the dimes. And we get to a point, and I'm like, hey, guess what? I need some more time. You would have thought I asked for $1 million. What? We can't do that. I'm like, I need like 10 days. I'm like, you have no idea what this is on my end. You guys are just here filming it. You come and go as you please. Because, they come in and they film like the important turns. They're like, okay, every 2 weeks, let's go film the big change this week or whatever.
So were they, before he gets out, were they there every day, or were they there in segments coming out for certain key phase items that were happening in the
So
build?
they had, I think, what do they call? I can't remember the guy's title, but they had somebody here full time. So if something happened or whatever, he could
get on camera.
Get it on camera. Let's film it, whatever. So he was out there almost every single day filming what we were doing. And then they would come out like the big production with 2 cameras, sound, everything, about every 2 weeks, I'd say. So ended up, I got the extra time, but it was,
they did. So they did grant you the 10 days.
They gave me an extra 5 days. I asked for 10, they gave me 5, right?
Wow.
So I had it was like 60 days is what we did it in. And I'm like having flashbacks. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is you're gonna give me a heart attack. No. But we got it done. It turned out amazing. They were very pleased with it. My team was great. I've ran everybody through the cleaner on that one. I mean, everybody, you could just see it in their face. They were crushed. I was crushed because on top of filming, I was working hands on. Trying to get anything we could done to get this thing done for them, and we did it, and it turned out great. And they filmed 70 pilots, and we were one of 7 that made the air.
Wow. So they actually went out and actually filmed 70. So even in the 60-day time frame, they did this 70 times throughout HGTV.
Correct. So there's the production companies are not, they basically are like a subcontractor of scripts, right? So they go out and they find the talent, and they're basically bankrolling it, right? HGTV gives them a little bit of money, but they basically have to cover the other end of it. So they would then go out, find the talent, they'd film the show, and then hopefully it gets picked up because then they can cash out. Yeah.
So the risk for the production company, so, okay, Landon, we believe in him. We're going to take a risk. We're going to cover a lot of this cost. We're going to go, and then hopefully it performs. Now, how much influence did you deal with the product itself? I mean, being that this particular project was your own investment and your own flip, did you have full control on all the finishes and design? Did HGTV have a role? Was there discount in with vendors as far as what you can share, what you can't share?
So I was working with a designer at the time, and we did basically the whole interior together. And the exterior was my buddy Brian, who did an amazing job. And then we worked with a lot of vendors that actually contributed a lot. So we were very fortunate. I was able to use some of my relationships I built, right, over the past years, and they donated some items to help offset some costs. But we did good on the house. It was just so stressful, Brad, that I don't think I guess I don't know if I'd ever go back and do it. It's one of those things. I'm like, you know what? I'm almost happy it didn't work out. Of course, if it would have worked out, I would have managed it and been able to go with it and been fine and figured out how to deal with it. But because of what we did, it was just like we bit off too much. I'm like, we should have just remodeled the 1,300 square foot house, made it really cool, and called it a day.
Yeah, it makes sense because I mean, if it's to go on for season 1 or future, you're going to set up systems. You're going to have other, whether it be an agent, you're going to have other aspects to help you and manage that process instead of trying to do it all yourself. And so, really, I mean, do you feel that experience had an impact just on your company structure individually, even as a one-man band, Landon, that, hey, this is now how I can set my projects up in the future to be more successful, and now set this protocol so that I'm not so stressed out?
For sure. It 100% helped me. I guess it let me know how fast I could actually work and how I could streamline things so much more, how I could overlap a couple areas of subs that before I was like, you're done. Next day, this guy starts, where I could be like, okay, I can get this guy in a day or two early working with this guy because they're not maybe in the same area, or they're not, they're just not on top of each other. So that definitely helped, and helped speed up a lot of my other processes and got my name out there a little bit and got me some more jobs.
Yeah. So how did that, well, I mean, just when you think of, I don't want to say notoriety, but just the opportunity where you can say a scene on HGTV and your vendors could say that, but did that change, your relationship moving forward, or opportunities for future work, future projects, future networking?
Yeah, I would say yes, but because it was a pilot and we only aired, I think it was a total of 4 times, and we were up against the Final Four one time. I'm like, yeah, who was watching HGTV with that?
Right.
I'm like, no shot. But it definitely changed a few things. It was fun. It was interesting to go into people's homes, and you could just see how they were kind of almost, I don't want to say starstruck. I'm not like a celebrity by any means, but you could see like they're like, once you're on TV, it just changes, your persona of how people are.
Because they feel like they know you, right?
Right.
From watching you work and your mannerisms and your creativity.
And they're just like, that house was so amazing. And how many people like just knew things about me? Maybe they went back in my IG and did some digging or something. It was just, so it was neat. Like people like paid it. I guess they just paid more attention, So it was neat to feel like, I don't know, like all your hard work kind of paid off, sort of thing, in a way,
So you're glad you did it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would not take anything, but I would do it again, but I just don't think I would, I'd just do it differently. I don't know.
Probably wouldn't bite off, not more than you can chew, but just been more conservative as far as the expectation and goal.
Yeah, and I think just it being so rushed took some of the fun out of it, and that's what I know. Like if it went on, it would be more fun. You could have more fun with it. It was like we have to get this done, and these people were literally like, "Hey, this has to happen. This needs to get done." And people asking, "Hey, is there going to be a problem today? We need a problem." They're like fishing to. I'm like, no, we don't want that. We're already on a tight schedule. It's right. Hey, can we?
I don't want a water leak.
Yeah. And it was actually funny. We ended up having a problem where our my framer, who I always let do all my trusses and roof lines and everything, when you're tying into an old roof, you got to be spot on with those things. And we were 3 inches over.
Oh, wow.
Nobody really probably knows that on there, but we ended up, they actually filmed part of it and they put it on there, but he literally like feathered it back into the house. So nobody will really ever notice it. But it was one of those things, as being even a builder, is kind of, I guess you could almost say I was embarrassed in a way, because I'm just like, man, that's never happened. And now it's happening. And there's cameras rolling and they're like, tell us more. And I'm like, no, let's not talk about it. Yeah. I'm like, look at this tile over here. I'm like, it's really cool. So
yeah, tell us more about your issues so we can all watch it. And
yeah, right. And pick it apart and start getting all these DMs. You're like, idiot.
Yeah. I can't believe you. What kind of builder are you?
You're a schlep. No. So, no, that project, it was a lot of fun. It was interesting how it all ended, though. So I had the guy that was there filming all the days, like that was there just in case they needed to catch some little bit of footage of this, a little bit of footage of that. We became buddies. Like, we were good buddies, right? We built these relationships. Oh, I did. I used these relationships I had with vendors and found this one company to donate furniture for the outside, like $6,000 worth of patio furniture, and it was like 3 pieces, like nice stuff.
Yeah, really nice.
And so it's all there. It's out back there. And the house had already been robbed once during the filming, right? Like, these guys came in, they took a bunch of our tools, whatever. It was like some jigsaws.
So someone had just broke in and taken stuff.
Right, which happens a lot on job sites. It's super unfortunate. That's like my least favorite person, is the people that steal people's tools, because that's how they make their living, Like, that's just rude. But so yeah, we got robbed. They took a few things then, so we were already on watch of like, okay, we don't want it to be robbed anymore. We had the neighbors watching for us. Okay, great. So we're done with the house. It came down to the wire to where we were there till 1 a.m. the night before the reveal, right? Like, staging it, putting all the stuff in. And this guy's like, I have some friends that I can bring over and help you guys, and the whole crew's there. I'm like, oh, that would be super helpful. So this guy shows up and he's like, yeah, I can hang, some curtain rods, blah, blah, blah. He goes and starts trying to measure out curtain rods. And I'm like, this guy has no idea what he's doing. And at that stage, I'm like, this guy's just going to start drilling holes in the drywall that I'm like, yo,
now you got to repair them.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this guy? So I went over and had like start babysitting. And all of a sudden, these other 2 people show up at like 11:30. And they have like alcohol. I'm like, oh, is this turning into like a little party now? What's going on here? So I'm just like, okay, what's happening? Then another person showed up. And that's when I like went over to the producer. I'm like, okay, listen, we'll finish it from here. I'll stay late. I don't care. Get these people out of here. She went over. She got rid of them, or the director, I should say. She went and got rid of them, and they went on their merry way. And they were just weird. They were like so friendly, but I was using my reading. My reading skills, going,
your poker skills.
Yeah, my poker skills. I was like, I'm all in. You guys are bluffing. I don't know what your deal is. So, so the reveal is let's hear. It's the next day. Going back in my timeline here. So that night, it's pouring rain, and I get this call at like 2 a.m. and it's the neighbor. Landon, I got him. And I said, what do you mean you got him? What are you talking about? I'm half asleep, I got him. I got the people. They're in the driveway. The cops are here. The cops, everybody, they have their guns out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? I was like, I'm on my way.
Because you're like half asleep.
And I live 10 minutes, like 10 minutes from this house. So I'm like, I jetted over there. I beelined it to the house. Cops are there. These guys are in the driveway, backed up, and they have that lounge furniture, or the furniture, in the back of their truck. It's pouring rain, right? I go walking up, and this guy's like, see, there's Landon. He knows us. See, he knows. And I'm like, you know, it's pitch black, it's raining. I walk up, I get a little closer, and it's one of those guys that came over to try to help us finish the inside. The guy trying to hang the curtain
That's
rods.
crazy.
Come on, man. You know, and he said, oh yeah, Landon told us we could come by here and pick this stuff up. I'm like, I told you to come get the furniture at 3 or, you know, it's like 3 a.m. in the morning in the pouring rain. You guys have my permission to take this? I'm like, that's your story? Like, crooks are so funny. I'm like, come on, man. So he
thinking you're gonna bail him out or something.
Yeah, literally. He's like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, no, these guys are not. They do not have our permission. And actually, my partner on the deal, he lived 2 doors down from the house, and he had come out and he walked up and he told him what time it was. He was like, hey, you guys don't steal from us. You're going to jail. You know. And I just stood there and I was just like, you guys are just, you know. So it was just a weird ending to a really, you know, I guess fun and stressful time that still happened. And I said, oh man, all that. And then this happened. But, you know, hey, the house sold, highest price house in the neighborhood. It was great. Turned out great for everybody. I was very fortunate to have all my crew on there, and they got to use the HGTV name forever for the life of it. And they got some exposure, and, you know, just, I was very thankful for everybody that was involved. So
yeah, I know a lot of your vendors have had a lot of success, and I will say, see, just like for everybody, you know, what we see on TV is perfect. Everything's piece of cake. It's super easy, just like we show on Instagram, right?
Oh, if they could only just see the behind the scenes.
No one wants to see that.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with theft? I mean, theft is an issue I think many of us deal with, and there's a lot of, whether you're building in you know, different parts of town, you know, some parts of town we're fortunate to where they have 24-hour security, 24/7 security. In fact, a lot of the HOAs, you know, fortunately they have guard gates, so you can't even get in unless you're resident between, you know, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. So they're really restrictive, which does help us, you know, with theft. But then we have other projects that are exposed. And so how do you deal with that aspect of the business?
I mean, first thing I do on almost every single one of my jobs is put up a fence. We lock it up every night. I don't barb wire the tops or anything like that, but I put a chain link fence because it's enough that, hey, if somebody wants to get in, they got to go over a fence to get into your property, you know. And then if somebody sees them, they're gonna be making a little bit more noise. Yeah, you know, they look a little suspect. But you know, really that's only the thing I've actually done. You know, I've thought about, do we set up cameras or anything like that? But again, I'm actually in a fortunate area myself right now where there's actually 2 guard gates to get into where we're building right now, right below Camelback, and you know, nobody can really get in there. And I guess one of the other things that is good is I trust all my people on staff to make sure we're locked up and good.
So you have some amazing stories. That's why I enjoy conversing with you, Landon. So I know you've had another theft experience unrelated to the couches.
Oh yeah. So my first house I built ground up, actually in the neighborhood that I live in currently, which is really funny. And it's on the same street, go figure. My appliances got stolen right out of there, which is, I mean, you know, part of me, I was so upset. I was pissed, you know, but I was also going, man, these guys are, you have to be some serious, like, you have enough time to get in there, take a fridge, a dishwasher, a microwave, you know, unbolt everything clean, because if it damage it, you know, they probably can't resell it. That night it was raining too. So, hey, when it rains, go check your job sites. So it was just random.
That's amazing of all chances, because it doesn't rain a whole lot in Phoenix.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if it's literally, do they do it because of the noise, you know, like it offsets? I don't know. I'm not a crook. Ha. No. But they, so the appliances got stolen out of there. I had all the receipts, all the item numbers and everything.
Serial numbers.
Yep, serial numbers. Yep, thank you. I started searching Craigslist and OfferUp. I don't actually think OfferUp was around then. I was searching Craigslist, and I found the set. One of the slide-in stove that I had was very specific, and it was like a newer model that just came out. So not very many people had it or were using it. It was backless, right? So it was a true slide-in. And I recognized it right away. I'm like, hey, that's my stuff. It was at a store over in West Phoenix. They were selling it out of the front. So I'm like, this is straight mafia style. And in through the back, out through the front, you know? So I go over there. And before I went over there, I got online on Google and I researched where all the serial numbers were on each piece. So I could act like I found out it was the stove, I think, is where I found it's on like the inside door. So I acted like I was looking at the stove, and I memorized like 7 of the numbers, and I'm like, the first 7 match. I'm like, what are the odds, So I called the cops over there. Took them 2 hours to get there. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I negotiate to buy my appliances back. That was the best part. I got the guy. He's like, 2,500. I was like, I don't know, man. Let me call my wife real quick. I was like BSing with him. And so I negotiated him down to like 2,200. So here I am trying to buy my stolen appliance stuff that just came out of my house. And he takes the deal. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the bank, because I was like, I got to buy some time to go.
Yeah, to wait for the cops.
Wait for the cops, right? So he's like, okay, deal. So I leave and I drive away, and I went and parked in a parking lot not too far away. And the police finally showed up. Literally, it was 2 hours later. And I showed him, here's my receipts. I had my paper copies in hand. I'm like, here's my receipts. Here's the police report, because we filed a police report 2 days prior. And he's like, why do you guys have these? And they're like, we bought them on Craigslist. That was their out. So because that was their story, we had no way to prove that they were in the house. They call it almost what's called a pawn shop clause. So it's like a pawn shop. If you go to a pawn shop and you give them something to you go to pawn it, right? Yeah.
Right.
And it ends up being stolen. Well, the pawn shop they're out the money, right? They just have to return it to the rightful owner, right? So they're like, okay, well, we'll stay here while you load them up. So I drove around back, put them on my truck, and took them back. And literally nothing happened to those people. Nothing. And that's what was just so, I'm just like, are you kidding me? I'm like, do y'all not see what's going on here? I'm like, you should call the FBI. I'm like, these people are taking it in through the back and out the front. I'm like, go look at the rest.
Especially an appliance store.
Yeah, and it was just unbelievable. But the kicker to this story was we have insurance on house, right? So we file a claim with everything, So I call the insurance company. I'm like, hey, listen, we found the appliances. And I just want to make sure, like, hey, you guys don't give us money because, that could be insurance fraud. I didn't know what was going to happen. So the agents because they're stolen, now they're technically used. So we have to give you full replacement value for new ones. So I took those appliances, put them back in. They cut me a check for like $5,500, and I made $5,500. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, this is such a good side hustle right here, But that really happened, and I just couldn't believe that. I'm like, because I did the right thing by calling them. I didn't want to, I was like, I didn't know. And they gave me the money anyways. I told them.
You're being truthful with the insurance company, lay everything out and make sure it's all properly documented. But it's amazing that just the next day, they show up at the appliance store. Now, you've done your due diligence, figuring out, that's a lot of research from your side to figure that out.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know. What do you want to say? When you just got that gut feeling, I'm like, man, somebody's going to try to sell these. I just know it. And the
popped up next day.
That's it. And it was interesting because the guys, they were speaking Spanish, the guys that were working the shop over there. And, Brad speaks Spanish, if you guys didn't know. And way much, much better than I do, but I know enough. And, in their speakings, they were basically just saying like, hey, we need to be better about doing this. And we're idiots. And like, and they have no idea I can speak Spanish. So that was, I caught him and I just gave him a glare. I just gave him like the side eye, and I was just like, man.
See, it's amazing. You, for those listening, Landon speaks really good Spanish. I'm fortunate because I lived in Argentina for 2 years. So, I
didn't know that.
Yeah. So I lived there and spoke fluent Spanish, read, write. And I minored in Spanish in college. Oh. And I didn't finish my minor. I was like 3 classes away from minor in Spanish, but I was ready to get out and get into the workplace. So I finished construction management. I was ready to go and not finish my minor. But getting back to, speaking of appliances, lead time, right? This is one of the issues we're having, not to call any manufacturers, but supply chain. For us in the past, if I need appliances, we'd have them on order 30 days out. We're ready. We're installed. Let's go. Now it's like 8 months out. So how are you dealing with, especially when you're doing a remodel or an investment or flip, and times of the essence, even a client, right? Can't slack for our clients here. How are you managing that process?
When it first started happening, there wasn't a way to, it was just had to go and say, this is what's happening. We can order them now. I don't know when they're going to, usually it takes, my appliance guy can get me stuff within 10 days, legitimately, unless it's a special piece, and now it was turning into 3 and 4 months, so you're just having to tell people like, hey, we might have to use your old appliances for the time being and throw these new ones in when they arrive. But once we got a grasp of what was actually happening across the board, not just with appliances, it was a ton of chemical based items that we were on. It's more or less just, the moment you sign a contract, you're getting draws to get all the stuff that takes 4 to 6 months to get, hoping that it lands at the time you need it, enough to where I have a storage unit to where I've put stuff in that just because I'm like, well, it's better to have it early than not have it. I've staged it a couple times. I've had to do that. And one of the biggest things I ran into in this last build I've been working on in Paradise Valley was spray foam. It was gone. It disappeared. And I called companies all around here. Even my regular guy I use, he's like, I can't get any. He's like, he goes, I can either do your lids or your walls. I'm like, but not both. He goes, that's how we're managing our clients right now. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, whatever. I was like, let me do what I'm good at. I get on the phone right away and I start calling all the places around Phoenix, and they're like, nope. Are you a client of ours? And I said, no. And they said, well, we would only give you X amount anyways. And I'm like, oh, jeez. I'm like, what if, what if I brought you, no, I'm like, what if I had a briefcase?
What if I have a briefcase of cash? Would you be?
Yeah, no, that was not happening. Even just the sweet talk had no shot. It was no shot. So I'm like, all right, let me start calling all of our border states, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, nothing. I'm like, I could drive and go pick it up. Nothing. Calling around everywhere. I finally find this huge foam supplier out of Florida. Right. And we're like ready to put foam in. It's like, it's coming up in the next couple weeks. Right. Rough trades are about out of there. So I'm like, all right. So I get hold of this guy and he's like, I have 3 kits left. And kits meaning like they come in like 50-gallon drums, right? And 2-piece to make chemicals mixed together. Long
Right.
story short, whatever. And he's like, I have 3 kits left. I'm like, send them. I'm like, what is it going to take? So here I am. I'm buying it already. What do you tell me? Last week it was $1,900 for a kit. Now it's $2,800. So it went up $900 per
plus freight, plus shipping,
and then tack on it was $550 in freight to get it over here. Which I actually thought I was like, that's not too bad from Florida.
Cheaper than driving there.
But they just throw it on another load. I'm like, oh man, I need to get in the freight business. I'm like, dang. So we got it here. It arrived, and they're like, well, we don't have a lift. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I had to borrow a buddy's like commercial building that he owns, unload it there, load it on my truck, take it to the job site. I mean, and I had to explain it to my clients, and they're like, thanks. Like that was,
yeah,
like,
that's all
do
you got.
Realize what I just did to get you, like, because I like to be proud of the product we turn out, and I feel like spray foam is one of the best insulators you can use. It gets in all the nooks and crannies and really gives people a good product, which I pride myself on. So, but it was just the reaction I got. I'm like, you guys have no idea. I'm like, you're so lucky to have somebody like me that went to the extra mile to like do that, because most people just ended up, my friends are like, we just went with bats, like bat insulation, because they couldn't get foam. And I'm like, nah, we'll find it.
And you think about the construction process. I mean, the amount of effort and energy that went in for you to get the product, right? For spray foam insulation, this is a 2-day at most install. I don't want to say nothing burger, but it's something that's easily glossed over throughout the building process. Pass 4-way inspection, get it insulated, go to drywall, right?
Right.
And so you just kind of move through it, and you think about just how complex a build is now, and think about the complex stuff you're doing. If just, I don't want to say the simple tax, but something that's pretty straightforward to come in and out, and then you move on, that it's at that level that you're trying to source this product.
Right. And I mean, it's just, you never know how, what do you want to say? How good we have it until it's gone, sort of thing, When everything's ready, available, you're just, it's easy. Hey, we're doing this thing. So now it's been like fighting for materials and trying to get ahead of stuff and making sure, like windows has been a big problem for everybody right now. I can't tell you how many builds I've gone by and the foam's up like for stucco and chicken wire, and then it all stops like 4 inches, 4 inches from or like 6 inches away from a window. I mean, I've seen 10, 15 homes like that. And I'm like, well, windows right now are running 4 months. So
it's interesting bringing up the insulation, because this is the first time I heard this story. And what's interesting, and I won't call it the manufacturer, but I was actually meeting with the manufacturer that sources, right, the product to the installers. So the installers buy this company. It's from a company back east. And they said, hey, for our product, there's 47 installers in Phoenix, right, that install this product. And they said, because we have such supply chain issues from overseas and locally for a plethora of reasons, they're only selling to companies that can buy a full truckload a month, right? So they'll ship out from back east a full truckload a month. I mean, this is a big ask, a big commitment, and you had to be buying one a month at minimum, 2-3 trucks a month, whatever it is, to get the product. So they said only 4. So that's part of the problem is now you have the manufacturer that's saying, okay, out of 47 of you, only 4 of you qualify, and I can only get enough product for 4 of you, so you 4 are getting the product every month. And so you think about the strain that puts on you and I now. Well, now, not just competitively bid, but you think, okay, so all the builders in town and when remodeling that needs this product, well, there's only 4 out of 47 that can get it. And so it's just, I think this is part of the conversation that, that whether we're not speaking about enough, understanding enough as builders, our clients don't understand that it's just an incredibly complex time. And how do we set that proper expectation? How do we convey that to the client for them to understand, what you and I are dealing with every day?
Right. I mean, and one thing to touch on there is, I was jokingly saying, yeah, he's only building 20,000 square foot. I mean, when you think of 20,000 square foot home or 10,000 or 3,000, what you guys are building, I mean, there's still high dollar numbers in that. And, and living in, the Scottsdale area where you guys are building or Paradise Valley, these aren't like $500,000 homes. These are like multi-million dollar homes, right? That we've been working on out here. And with that dollar figure comes a special client, which is no is not a good word.
Right.
It's like not an acceptable word a lot of times. So you have to really massage it. And the way I've got around it is basically just trying to be as upfront as I can. The moment I know, they know within 5 minutes. This is what I get. Or I have my vendors. I'm like, listen, you got to do me a solid and send me an email that explains all this, because that way it's coming from them and you don't have to be the, not necessarily the bad guy, but it's like, it's nice to have some backup and be like, this is what I get. You saw when I ordered this, here's the update. It's shipping now 45 days late. I can't do anything about it. Like, don't, but still sometimes there's, you just sit there and what do you,
it's really tough. I will say it's funny. We have a very complex project right now. It's our largest square foot home. It's a very large home, very complex build. And what's amazing is the client has an owner's rep, right? There's a third party consulting firm working with us. And it's actually been a breath of fresh air. I've worked with a lot of, third party construction consultants, and some are amazing and some are really challenging, right? Almost like impeding the progress or communication of the project. But in this case, it's been amazing because it's not that clients don't believe us, but to have someone who's not associated with AFT outside of our process to say, no, here's what I'm dealing with around the country from the commercial sector, from the residential sector. This is unique to Brad and AFT. Like, here's what the projections are. Here's where we're at. And it is comforting because
that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, we really have to understand market conditions so that we can convey that to our customers and set those proper expectations to be successful.
Right. I can only imagine it because you guys are a lot, obviously, huge, a lot larger than I am. But so when I'm having a problem with it, I think of guys like you right off the bat that are having it. You're not having it times 1 like I'm having it on my build. You're having it times 10 or 5 or whatever, how many ever builds you have going on, So I'm just, that's tough,
It's a challenging process. So for you, Landon, I mean, you've been, you've done remodels, you've done HGTV, you've done flips. I was able to go up to Sedona and tour. You bought an amazing hillside project, finished your first hillside, ground up from the hillside. Very complicated build that turned out incredible.
Thank you.
Where are you pivoting now? Like, do you see your business pivoting? Are you focusing in on all these different elements?
So the build I'm on right now is my last client build in terms of ground up home. What I've been doing is I've been buying dirt, and the plans are currently being worked on right now for multifamily, and those are just build and hold. So I call it mailbox money. I'm here. I am. I just got to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm building these homes for these people, or whether I'm building them for them to flip or building it for them to live in, whatever. You're creating such a huge, large investment for them, and my time's leaving with that investment. So now I've just said, okay, it's time to take what I've been doing in the past, get away from the client thing, and focus more on myself, and that's building my portfolio, which is going to be multifamily and some cabin units.
Interesting. So, I mean, not just locally here in Metro Phoenix, but also outside of Metro Phoenix.
Right. So I've been looking up in the mountains in a few different areas, Prescott, Sedona, Flagstaff. Dirt prices have gone through the
They're
roof
pretty
up
expensive
there.
right now.
Yeah. So that's been a challenging part of it. Fortunately for me, being the builder developer, you can shave some of that down. But those areas are just very sought after, and I want a place like a getaway place, and maybe it turns into an Airbnb as well.
So these are investment places. And now are you working with other investors? Is this something you're trying to self-fund? I mean, how is that out?
So the first one I have is a 9 unit, and that's in South Phoenix, and that'll be self-funded between my father and I. And then hopefully plan A is to then, cash out refi out of those and go do the next one, which is the next piece of dirt, but it's double the size of this one. So
And just continue to build that portfolio slowly but surely, one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the mentality change? I mean, it's not that you're doing a lesser quality project with multifamily, but it's different, right? The construction methods are typically different. Has there been a pivot there from you, especially being such a creative and design mind frame, such a talent as far as that goes?
Absolutely, because right away you're turning into a landlord, and your units are going to get thrashed.
Yeah.
Of course.
So you have to think of products that aren't just going to look nice, but also perform for a lot of people and wear and tear.
Yeah, like your natural stones in terms of tiles and stuff like that, cement tile, out of the question. All those things that somebody's not going to really take care of, out of the question. You're not doing waterfall countertops in these, You're not putting in some nice white oak cabinets. You're doing. I'll do something nice to make to
be durable and be presentable.
Exactly, because also the long term gain is the nicer your places, the higher value they are as well, right? So better for the portfolio. So the idea here being outside, make them very attractive. Inside, maybe just go a little more minimal.
And how does it work from the management side? Are you going to work on the leasing and everything, the contracting yourself?
For the first few, yes, probably the 9-plex. Yeah, I'll get that. We actually thought about doing master leases. City of Phoenix is...
Explain the master lease.
So more or less finding somebody like, for instance, I've been talking with City of Phoenix, and they have a housing shortage for low income, right? So it'd be like turning over your property to the City of Phoenix, and you're just collecting one check, and they fill your units.
So when they fill them, now what about if there's issues or there's repair or damage? How does that factor in?
So that would all fall back on me, of course. I mean, I got to go in there and what do we do? Usually you're talking garbage disposal,
faucet, paint,
yeah,
touch-ups, drywall, dings.
But, for the first 3 to 5 years, very minimal, I won't be doing carpet.
Yeah. Okay. So no
carpet. That's like because if they have pets, it's game over.
Yeah. So and then you got to rip it all out, replace it. And
right. So, I mean, that's, what do you want to say? It's a calculated gamble, but it's I feel very confident with it. And, I've been fortunate enough. My father had a ton of rentals back in Colorado where we're from, and he's very versed in that. And he's taught me a ton about that. And I have some great friends that have been involved in it. So I feel really happy to segue into this because I've kind of burnt myself out.
It's tough. I think it's hard to relate that, when you talk about the burnout, that there is some truth to that. And I don't think, again, we talk about that enough, that everything's portrayed one way on Instagram, right? Or social media. But the reality is it's a grind, and it's easy to get run down. And you think about mental health, you think about physical health, and especially with COVID, with other things. I mean, and I see it, we're demanding so much of our employees, so much of our trade partners, late nights, weekends. I mean, they're getting worked like I've never seen. And then you have the stress of the clients and everything, and it makes it really difficult.
Yeah. And you nailed it with my tradesman, my subcontractor. I've been running them hard, and I feel bad, but I try to remind them also. I'm like, hey guys, I'm like, at some point I feel like this is going to turn, but the amount of people moving to our city, I'm having a hard time seeing when it's going to turn, Everybody says all California is moving here, and I'm like, I believe it, but there's also a lot of other people moving here from all over the U.S. I mean, I don't know how many people listening actually know much about Arizona, but we have 0 natural disasters here.
Right.
We have no hurricanes, no tornadoes. I mean, a monsoon's like our biggest thing, and maybe we got some hail. Yeah, it's hot. Yeah, you got to catch on fire during the summer. Everyone's but it's a very desirable place to live.
It is, and a lot of outdoors, a lot of hiking, and then access.
Right.
Like you mentioned, you're going to be going to the mountain area just a few hours away. I mean, you're 9,000 feet elevation,
right.
Ski resorts, mountains, and so there's a lot of proximity to lakes and golf, and it's a good lifestyle.
I love it here.
We better quit selling people in Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. If you're listening right now,
Don't
please
come.
do not. Yeah.
No, just kidding.
Yeah.
No, so then I guess, without talking about what's up kind of and exciting, because you've alluded to that, some amazing things in the works, which is amazing. So congrats on that, Landon. So what, to close this, what's the best advice you've been given?
Don't bite off more than you can chew. Learn how to learn the word no, and that's something I actually got more or less from my dad, just being, he's like, you're working too much, you're doing, and for a while there, I'm like, it's fine, I'm making money, whatever. But no, it's really, it's just taking on too much, and you're creating, what are you doing? And you're missing your family time. You're doing all this, so it's really just been, that's been my biggest learning curve, is just, learning how to say no and knowing your self-worth, I guess, like I know I'm more than just building for somebody, I feel what my next stage in building is going to be. It's going to not only, of course, it'll help my family immediately, but it's going to help a lot of local families, which is amazing to me, because the cost of living here has gone through the roof, and a lot of people don't, make that much money to afford a place to live. And that's, I'm a lucky person to be smart and, creative, and being able to make things happen. And that to me it's rewarding, to be able to know that I'll provide a home for somebody that they can afford.
I love that you share that, because I had Sean Van Dyke on, and he is really big on, he helps construction businesses. That's his firm, right? He's a business coach, business mentor in the construction industry. And his big thing is learn how to say no. And he just, that's something that we don't do, and we're yes people, and, but there's times that we have to push back in expectations, negotiations, whatever it may be. So,
and I think that's when I grew the most, is when I started saying no.
Yeah, because we can only do so much, right? It's a labor intensive industry, and it's not automated as much as we want it to be. And even though there's automation we can do to some extent, there's still the hands-on that has to take place.
Absolutely.
So where can our listeners find you?
Well, easiest place to find me is on Instagram at Landon Mondragon, and last name's Mondragon.
It's an amazing name. Well, Landon, you've been awesome. I mean, just a wealth of wisdom, and I appreciate the knowledge, the friendship, the reputation you have here in town. And so thank you for coming on today.
I appreciate it, man. I literally thank you so much for having me on.
So thank you all for tuning into the podcast today. And just as a recap, if you check the show notes, they're just going to have all the links for the topics that we discuss. And also, one of our favorite features now is the chapters that go through the conversation. So if there's certain topics you want to revisit or listen to, they're outlined by the time that we discuss those. And again, we can't thank you enough for all of your support. Please make sure and download our podcast, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you download your podcast.